They stopped setting a place for me at Christmas dinner. Didn't announce it, didn't explain it. Just quietly removed my chair like I was already dead. But I wasn't dead. I was just inconvenient. Before I begin my story, thank you for listening to an old woman's heartbreak in real time. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what traditions your family has abandoned. And please, hit that subscribe button. Sometimes the only way we're heard is when the numbers prove we matter. Now, let me tell you about the Christmas that taught me I'd become invisible in my own family. It started long before Christmas, really. It started with the little things, the way my children began treating me like furniture that had outlived its usefulness, but was too sentimental to throw away. The way conversations would pause when I entered a room, not because they were planning surprises, but because they'd been talking about me like I wasn't there. My name is Dorothy, and I'm 78 years old. I raised 3 children as a single mother after my husband died in a car accident when my youngest was only 6. I worked 2 jobs for 15 years to keep us afloat, missed countless hours of sleep to help with homework, and sacrificed every dream I ever had to make sure my children had opportunities one never did. Rebecca, my oldest, became a lawyer. Michael, my middle child, owns a successful construction business. Sarah, my baby, married a doctor and lives in a house bigger than anything I could have imagined when I was changing her diapers on a folding table because we couldn't afford a changing station. They all turned out well. Better than well. And for years, I told myself that their success was my greatest achievement. That watching them build their own lives was worth the loneliness that crept in as they needed me less and less. But somewhere along the way, needing me less became seeing me less. And seeing me less became forgetting me altogether. It started with the phone calls. When Rebecca first became a lawyer, she called every Sunday without fail. We'd talk for an hour about her cases, her life, her dreams. But as the years went by, the calls became shorter. Then every other Sunday. Then monthly. Then only when she needed something. Michael used to bring his kids over every Saturday. My house would fill with their laughter, their questions, their sticky fingers on my clean walls. I'd make pancakes, shaped like animals, and let them help me tend my garden. But as the kids got older and busier with sports and friends, the visits stopped. Now I see them maybe 4 times a year, and they spend the whole time staring at their phones. Sarah lived with me for 2 years after college while she saved money. We'd watch movies together, cook elaborate meals just for fun, talk about everything and nothing. She was my closest friend. But after she married David, it's like I became a relic from her past that she wasn't sure how to fit into her new life. The real wake-up call came last spring. I fell in my kitchen and couldn't get up. I'd been reaching for something on a high shelf when my arthritis acted up and I lost my balance. I lay there for 6 hours before my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, came to check on me when she noticed I hadn't brought in my newspaper. 6 hours. On my kitchen floor. With a sprained wrist and bruised ribs. When the paramedics called Rebecca as my emergency contact, she didn't answer. She was in court. They left a message. She called me back 4 hours later. "Mom, are you okay? I just got your message." I was in depositions all day. I was okay, mostly. But what struck me wasn't the fall, or even the pain. It was the realization that I could have died on that kitchen floor, and none of my children would have known for days. Maybe weeks. "I'm fine," I told her. Mrs. Patterson helped me. "Good. Thank God for neighbors, right? Listen, I have to run to another meeting, but I'm glad you're okay. Love you." She hung up before I could tell her that I'd been scared. That lying on that cold floor, I'd thought about all the things I'd never said to them, all the ways I'd failed to prepare them for a world where I wouldn't always be there to fix things. Michael didn't call at all. Sarah sent a text. Rebecca told me about your fall. So scary. Feel better. Red heart hash. A text. About her mother's trip to the emergency room. That night, I sat in my kitchen looking at the spot where I'd fallen, and I realized something that made my chest feel hollow. I'd become optional in my children's lives. Not essential, not even important. Optional. Summer passed quietly. I started a small garden in my backyard, something to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. I planted tomatoes, peppers, herbs, and flowers. Every morning, I'd water them and talk to them like they were old friends. Because increasingly, they were the most consistent company I had. Rebecca called in July to tell me she was taking the kids to Europe for vacation. 3 weeks touring Italy and France. She was excited, chattering about museums and restaurants and historic sites. That sounds wonderful, I said. I've always wanted to see Italy. Oh, you should totally go sometime, Mom. Maybe when you're feeling more adventurous. More adventurous. As if I hadn't spent 40 years being adventurous enough to raise her children alone while working 60-hour weeks. Maybe I will, I said. But we both knew I wouldn't. Not because I couldn't afford it or wasn't capable, but because traveling alone at 78 feels less like adventure and more like a reminder that you don't have anyone to share the adventure with. Michael called in August to tell me he'd bought a vacation home in the mountains. 2 hours away from the city, he said. Perfect for weekend getaways. You'll have to come see it sometime, he said. Sometime. That word that means never but sounds polite. I'd love to, I said. When? Long pause. Well, we're pretty booked up through the fall with kids' activities and work stuff. Maybe after the holidays. Maybe after the holidays. Another way of saying never. Sarah was the worst, though, because she made the most effort to maintain the illusion that nothing had changed. She'd call every few weeks with updates about her life, but the conversations felt scripted, like she was checking items off a mental list. Call Mom. Check. Ask about her health. Check. Mention David and work. Check. Make vague plans to get together soon. Check. We should have lunch soon, became her signature phrase. We should have lunch soon, but David's schedule is crazy. We should have lunch soon, but I'm so busy with the house renovations. We should have lunch soon, but I'm traveling for work. We never had lunch. By October, I'd stopped pretending things were normal. I stopped calling them first. I stopped asking about their lives. I stopped offering to help with things they'd probably forgotten I was capable of helping with anyway. And you know what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing changed. Days passed without a single call. Weeks went by with maybe a text or two. My silence didn't make them reach out more, it just made the silence louder. That's when I realized the truth that no parent wants to face. They didn't need me anymore, and they'd forgotten that I might need them. Christmas had always been my time to shine. For 43 years, I'd been the orchestrator of Christmas magic. I'd start planning in September, shopping in October, decorating in November. By December, my house would transform into something from a holiday movie, complete with homemade cookies, perfectly wrapped presents, and a dining room table that could seat the growing family with room for everyone. Every year, the celebration got bigger as new spouses joined the family and grandchildren were born. At its peak, we'd have 18 people crammed into my house, laughing and eating and creating the kind of memories that make Christmas special. But this year, as October faded into November, I realized I hadn't heard a single word about Christmas plans. No one had called to coordinate schedules. No one had asked about the menu or offered to help with preparations. For the first time in 4 decades, I was waiting for someone else to mention Christmas. The waiting was torture. Every day, I expected the phone to ring with Rebecca's voice asking about dates and dishes. Every week, I thought surely Michael would mention something about the holidays when he called to check on me. Except he didn't call to check on me. By Thanksgiving, which I spent alone with a Stouffer's turkey dinner and a Hallmark movie, I knew something was seriously wrong. Nobody mentioned Christmas at all. The Tuesday after Thanksgiving, I broke down and called Rebecca. "Oh, Mom, hi. How was your Thanksgiving?" "Quiet," I said. "How was yours?" "Crazy busy. We went to David's parents' place upstate. The kids had a blast with their cousins. Janet made this incredible stuffing recipe from her grandmother. It was like something from a restaurant. Janet, Michael's wife, who had apparently hosted Thanksgiving for my family while I ate processed turkey alone in my kitchen. "That sounds lovely," I managed. Speaking of holidays, I was wondering about Christmas plans. Should I start shopping for the kids, or pause? The kind of pause that fills with everything you don't want to hear. "Actually, Mom, we've been meaning to talk to you about Christmas. Michael and Janet offered to host at their new house this year. It's bigger than yours, and honestly, it might be easier for everyone." Easier for everyone. Code for easier without you. "Of course," I said. "What time should I arrive? And what can I bring?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Well, that's the thing. The new house is great, but the dining room only seats 10, and with David's parents coming, and Janet's family, and all the kids, it's going to be pretty cramped. We were thinking maybe we could do a separate celebration with you. Like the weekend before or after. A separate celebration. Like I was a second-tier relative who got the B-list Christmas. Rebecca, I've hosted Christmas for your family for 43 years. I've never missed a single one. I know, Mom, and we appreciate everything you've done. But things are different now. The grandkids are older, they have their own traditions with friends. David's parents are getting older too, and this might be their last chance to travel. It's just logistics." Logistics. My exclusion from Christmas was a logistics problem. "I see," I said, though I didn't see at all. I saw that my daughter had found it easier to uninvite her mother than to find a bigger table, or ask one of David's relatives to host their own family. "Don't be upset, Mom. We'll still see you. Just separately." Separately. The word that meant I'd officially become too much trouble to include. "Of course," I said again. "I understand." But I didn't understand. I didn't understand how the woman who'd worked double shifts to buy Rebecca's school clothes had become such an inconvenience. I didn't understand how the mother who'd nursed her through pneumonia and helped her study for the bar exam had become someone you celebrated separately. After I hung up, I called Michael, hoping maybe Rebecca had misunderstood the situation. "Mom. Perfect timing. Janet and I were just talking about Christmas." My heart lifted slightly. Maybe there was room for me after all. "We're so excited to host everyone this year. The house is finally ready for a big family gathering. We've been planning this amazing menu. Janet found these recipes online that look incredible." "That sounds wonderful," I said carefully. Rebecca mentioned the space might be tight. "Yeah, a little. We can seat about 10 comfortably, 12 if we squeeze. But it should be perfect for everyone." Everyone except me, apparently. "Michael, am I included in everyone?" Silence. The kind of silence that comes when someone realizes they've forgotten to include their own mother in Christmas plans. Oh? Oh, Mom. Well, Rebecca was handling the coordination this year. I assumed she'd talk to you. She did talk to me. She said there wasn't room. More silence. It's not that there isn't room, exactly. It's just complicated. Janet's parents are coming from Florida, and they're getting older, so we wanted to make sure they were comfortable. And Sarah's bringing David's parents, and they don't really know anyone, so we thought it would be less overwhelming with a smaller group. Less overwhelming without me. The family matriarch was apparently overwhelming to people who'd been invited to my table for years. I understand, I said, though the understanding felt like swallowing glass. We'll definitely get together with you though. Maybe the weekend before. You could come see the house, and we could do our own little celebration. Our own little celebration. A consolation prize for the woman who'd created every Christmas memory they treasured. My last hope was Sarah. My baby. The one who used to crawl into my lap during Christmas morning and fall asleep surrounded by wrapping paper. Surely she would want her mother there. Sarah, honey, I need to ask you about Christmas. Oh my gosh, Mom, I'm so excited. Michael's house is going to be perfect. Janet's been sending me pictures of her decorating ideas, and it looks like something from Pinterest. It sounds lovely. Rebecca mentioned that space might be limited. Yeah, it's going to be cozy, but that's what makes it special, right? More intimate. Intimate. Without me. Sarah, am I invited to this intimate Christmas? The pause was different this time. Not the pause of someone who'd forgotten, but the pause of someone who'd hoped the question wouldn't come up. Mom. I thought Rebecca explained. It's just going to be really tight, and with David's parents coming, and they're not comfortable in big groups anymore. Since when is including your mother considered a big group? That's not what I meant. It's just, this year is complicated. Complicated. Another word for inconvenient. How is it complicated, Sarah? I'm your mother. It's Christmas. I know, but things are different now. We have in-laws to consider, and traditions from both sides of the family, and it's hard to balance everyone's needs. Everyone's needs except mine. What about my needs? The question hung in the air like an accusation, which I suppose it was. Mom, you're being dramatic. We'll see you. Just not on Christmas Day. Dramatic. Wanting to spend Christmas with my children was dramatic. After that phone call, I sat in my living room and looked at the Christmas decorations I'd already started putting up. The tree that I'd decorated the same way for 20 years. The stockings I'd hung for grandchildren who apparently wouldn't be coming to see them. The nativity scene that had belonged to my mother, which none of my children had ever shown interest in inheriting. For the first time in my adult life, I was spending Christmas alone. The next few weeks passed in a blur of painful realization. I watched other families preparing for the holidays, neighbors putting up lights, friends at the senior center talking about cooking for crowds, strangers in the grocery store buying ingredients for family feasts, and I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I started paying attention to conversations differently. When Mrs. Patterson mentioned her son flying in from Denver for Christmas, I felt a stab of envy. When the woman behind me in line at the pharmacy talked about needing to buy more chairs for Christmas dinner, I wanted to scream. Everyone had somewhere to go, someone to cook for, people who wanted them around. Everyone except me. The loneliness wasn't just about Christmas, though. That was just the symbol of something much deeper. I'd spent so many years defining myself as a mother that I'd forgotten to be anything else. And now that my children had outgrown needing a mother, or at least, needing the kind of mother I'd always been, I didn't know who I was supposed to be. I was the woman who made Christmas magic happen, except no one wanted my magic anymore. I was the grandmother who spoiled the grandkids, except the grandkids were too old for spoiling and too busy for visiting. I was the mother who was always available for emergencies, except my children had learned to handle their own emergencies. I'd become professionally unnecessary. 2 weeks before Christmas, I did something I'd never done before. I made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Martinez was younger than my daughters, with kind eyes and a way of listening that made me feel heard instead of humored. I told her about the Christmas situation, about the slow fade from my children's lives, about the crushing realization that I'd become optional. "Dorothy," she said after I'd finished my story, "how do you think your children would describe your role in their lives right now?" I thought about it. I don't think they'd describe me as having a role at all. I think they see me as someone they are obligated to maintain contact with, but not someone they actually want in their lives. "And how does that make you feel?" "Worthless," I said, and started crying for the first time in months. I spent my entire adult life making sure they had everything they needed, and now they don't need me for anything. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with myself. Have you considered that maybe the problem isn't that they don't need you, but that you've trained them not to see you as anything other than someone who serves their needs? The question hit like a slap. What do you mean? You've spent 40 years being the woman who makes things happen for other people. You've been the Christmas coordinator, the problem solver, the caretaker. But have you ever just been Dorothy? Have you ever let them get to know you as a person rather than as their mother? I stared at her, speechless. When's the last time you talked to one of your children about your dreams, your interests, your opinions about something that didn't relate to them? I couldn't remember. When's the last time you did something for yourself that had nothing to do with making their lives easier? I couldn't answer that either. Dorothy, I think your children have forgotten that you're a complete person, because you've forgotten it too. You've been so focused on being the perfect mother that you've erased yourself in the process. The session ended with homework. I was supposed to make a list of things I enjoyed doing that had nothing to do with my children or grandchildren. Things that interested me as Dorothy, not as mom or grandma. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a blank piece of paper for 2 hours. I couldn't think of a single thing. What did I like to do? I liked cooking, but only because it made other people happy. I liked decorating, but only because it created a welcoming space for family gatherings. I liked gardening, but mainly because it gave me something to talk about when my children called. Every hobby, every interest, every preference I had was somehow tied to my role as a mother. I'd become so thoroughly absorbed in other people's needs that I'd lost track of my own. The next day, I did something radical. I cancelled Christmas. Not just the celebration I'd been excluded from that had already been cancelled for me. I cancelled Christmas in my own house. I took down the decorations, packed away the stockings, and dismantled the tree. If my children wanted Christmas to happen without me, then Christmas would happen without me. But I wasn't going to sit in my house surrounded by decorations for a celebration I wasn't invited to, cooking food for people who wouldn't be coming, pretending everything was normal when nothing was normal. Rebecca called that afternoon. "Mom, Mrs. Patterson saw you taking down your Christmas decorations. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I just decided not to decorate this year." "Why?" "You love Christmas decorating." "I love decorating for Christmas celebrations. Since I'm not celebrating Christmas this year, there's no point in decorating." "What do you mean you're not celebrating Christmas?" "I mean exactly what I said. Christmas is a family holiday. Since my family is celebrating without me, I'm not celebrating." "Mom, you're being ridiculous. Just because we're not having dinner at your house doesn't mean you can't celebrate Christmas." How exactly am I supposed to celebrate Christmas alone, Rebecca? Silence. You could come to church with us. Or watch Christmas movies. Or cook something special for yourself. I could do those things. But they wouldn't be celebrating Christmas. They'd be killing time until Christmas was over. You're being dramatic again. There was that word again. Dramatic. Apparently, having feelings about being excluded from family traditions was dramatic. Maybe I am being dramatic, I said. But drama is the only thing that seems to get your attention anymore. I hung up before she could respond. The news of my Christmas cancellation spread through my family faster than I'd expected. Michael called that evening, then Sarah. Both with the same message. I was overreacting, being difficult, making things harder than they needed to be. None of them offered to change their plans to include me. They just wanted me to stop making them feel guilty about excluding me. That's when I realized something important. They weren't sorry I was hurt. They were sorry I was making my hurt their problem. The week before Christmas, I did something I'd never done in my entire adult life. I booked a cruise. Not a family cruise or a group tour designed for seniors. Just a regular 7-day Caribbean cruise leaving December 23rd and returning December 30th. I'd be gone for Christmas, New Year's, and everything in between. I didn't tell my children until the day before I left. You're going on a cruise? Rebecca's voice was shrill with disbelief. By yourself? Yes. Mom, that's crazy. What if something happens? What if you get sick? What if there's an emergency? Then I'll handle it. Or the ship's medical staff will handle it. Or someone else will handle it. The same way you've all learned to handle things without me. This is insane. You can't just disappear over the holidays. Why not? You've all made it clear that my presence isn't necessary for your holidays. So I'm making my presence unnecessary altogether. What about our plans to see you after Christmas? What plans? You mean the vague suggestions about maybe getting together sometime after the holidays? I've made other plans. For the first time in months, I felt powerful instead of pitiful. The cruise was a revelation. Not because it was luxurious or exciting, though it was both of those things, but because for 7 days, I was surrounded by people who didn't know me as anyone's mother or grandmother. I was just Dorothy, a woman on vacation. I sat at dinner tables with strangers who asked about my life, my opinions, my travels. I danced with widowers who complimented my dress instead of asking about my grandchildren. I joined game nights and shore excursions and spa treatments, and for the first time in decades, I had conversations that didn't center around other people's needs. On Christmas Day, I sat on the ship's deck watching the sunset over the ocean, drinking a pina colada, and reading a book I'd chosen simply because the cover looked interesting. No cooking, no cleaning, no coordinating, no pretending to be grateful for scraps of attention. It was the most peaceful Christmas I'd had in years. My phone had been buzzing with calls and texts from my children, but I'd turned it off after the first day. They could leave messages. I'd deal with them when I was ready. When I got home on December 30th, my answering machine was full. 23 messages from my children, ranging from worried to angry to guilt-tripping to genuinely apologetic. I listened to all of them, then deleted them without calling back. The next morning, New Year's Eve, Rebecca showed up at my door. Mom, we need to talk. She looked terrible, tired, stressed, older than her 45 years. Good, I thought. Maybe now she knows how it feels to worry about someone who won't respond to your calls. Come in, I said, though I didn't particularly want to. We sat in my living room, which still looked bare without Christmas decorations. She kept glancing around like she was trying to figure out what was different. Mom, you scared us. We didn't know where you were, if you were okay, if something had happened. I was on a cruise. I sent postcards. Postcards aren't the same as answering your phone. We were worried sick. Were you? Or were you worried that something might have happened and you'd feel guilty about it? She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? You excluded me from Christmas, but you still wanted to control how I spent Christmas. You didn't want me at your celebration, but you wanted me to be available for your guilt-relieving phone calls. We didn't exclude you. We just. You absolutely excluded me. And you know what? It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Her face went pale. What? Rebecca, I spent Christmas Day sitting on a ship's deck reading a book and watching dolphins. I had dinner with a lovely couple from Minnesota, who told me about their travels through Europe. I went to a comedy show and laughed until my sides hurt. I danced with a gentleman from Texas who told me I was beautiful. It was wonderful. But it wasn't Christmas. It was my Christmas. For the first time in 43 years, I had a Christmas that was about what I wanted instead of what everyone else needed. She started crying then, big messy tears that reminded me of when she was little and had scraped her knee. Mom, I'm sorry. We messed up. We didn't mean to hurt you. Yes, you did. Maybe not consciously, but you absolutely meant to hurt me. You meant to put me in my place, to show me that I wasn't important enough to accommodate, to teach me that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention you decided to throw my way. That's not true. Isn't it? Rebecca, when's the last time you asked me what I wanted instead of telling me what was convenient for you? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. When's the last time you called me just to talk, not because you needed something or felt obligated to check in? Again, no answer. When's the last time you treated me like a person whose feelings mattered instead of an aging parent you had to manage? The silence stretched between us like a canyon. I don't know, she finally whispered. I don't know either. And that's the problem. We sat quietly for a while. Outside, I could hear children playing in the snow, their voices bright with joy. Normal sounds of a normal life that felt very far away from the reckoning happening in my living room. Mom, I want to fix this. We all do. But I don't know how. I looked at my oldest daughter, the baby I'd rocked through countless sleepless nights, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, the woman who'd forgotten that her mother was also a woman with needs and feelings and dreams. You can start by seeing me, I said. Not as mom who needs to be managed or grandma who needs to be appeased. Just as Dorothy. A person who has opinions and interests and feelings that matter. I do see you. No, you don't. You see the role I play in your life. You see the services I provide. But you don't see me. She was quiet for a long time, processing this. How do I see you? The question was so simple and so profound that it took my breath away. My own daughter was asking how to see me as a person. You could start by asking what I want instead of telling me what's convenient. You could call to share something interesting with me instead of only calling when you need something. You could invite me to things because you want my company, not because you feel obligated. But we do want your company. Do you? Or do you want the comfort of knowing you've fulfilled your duty as a daughter? Another silence. I don't know anymore, she admitted. It was the most honest thing she'd said to me in years. Then maybe you should figure that out before we try to rebuild this relationship. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. What happens now? Now you go home to your family and think about whether you actually want a relationship with me, or whether you just want to stop feeling guilty about not having one. And when you've figured that out, you call me. And if I decide I want a real relationship, then we start over. From scratch. You get to know Dorothy, and I get to know the woman Rebecca has become instead of the child I remember. She stood to leave, pausing at the door. Mom? I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not just about Christmas, but about everything. About making you feel invisible. I know you are. But sorry isn't enough anymore. Change is what I need. After she left, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my quiet house. For the first time in months, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. The changes didn't happen overnight, but they did happen. Rebecca started calling just to talk about books she'd read, movies she'd seen, thoughts she was having about work and life. She asked for my opinions and actually listened to my answers. Michael invited me to see his house, not for a consolation Christmas, but for a regular weekend visit where we cooked together and talked about things that had nothing to do with obligation. Sarah started including me in her life in real ways, asking me to lunch, because she enjoyed my company, not because she felt she should. The grandchildren, following their parents' lead, began seeing me as a person instead of just a source of birthday money and Christmas presents. But the biggest change was in me. I started therapy regularly. I joined a book club, took a painting class, volunteered at the animal shelter. I discovered that I had opinions about politics, preferences in music, and a talent for watercolors that I'd never explored. I started dating. At 78, I started dating. His name is Frank, he's a retired teacher, and he thinks my opinions are interesting and my company is delightful. We go to movies and museums and restaurants, and he's never once asked me to define myself through my children. This past Christmas was different. Michael and Janet invited me to their house, but this time it was a genuine invitation, not an obligation. Sarah offered to help me cook my traditional dishes so they could be part of the celebration. Rebecca asked what I wanted to do instead of telling me what was convenient. And I said no. Not because I was still angry, but because I'd made other plans. Frank and I were spending Christmas in New York City, seeing shows and visiting museums and creating our own traditions. But Mom, Sarah said, it's Christmas. Families should be together. We are together, I said. We're just not together the way we used to be. We're together because we choose to be, not because we have to be. They were disappointed, but they understood. And more importantly, they respected my choice instead of trying to guilt me into changing it. We had our family celebration the weekend after New Year's, and it was lovely. Everyone was relaxed, genuinely happy to see each other, present in a way that felt real instead of obligatory. At one point, while we were cleaning up after dinner, Rebecca pulled me aside. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? I mean, really happy? I thought about it. Was I happy? I was certainly different than I'd been a year ago. I was lonelier sometimes, but less alone. I was more independent, but also more connected to people who truly wanted my company. I was older, but I felt more alive than I had in decades. Yes, I said. I think I am. Good. You deserve to be happy. It was such a simple statement, but it meant everything. For the first time in my adult life, my daughter saw my happiness as valuable for its own sake, not just as a byproduct of making her life easier. That night, as Frank and I sat on my porch sharing a bottle of wine and talking about plans for spring, I realized something profound. I'd finally learned the difference between being needed and being wanted. Being needed meant I was useful. Being wanted meant I was valued. For 40 years, I'd settled for being needed because I thought that was love. But love without want is just obligation. An obligation, no matter how well-intentioned, is a prison. My children needed me when they were young, because they couldn't survive without me. They need me now for different reasons, for continuity, for family history, for the comfort of knowing their mother is still there. But wanting me, that's different. That's choosing my company, because it enriches their lives, not because it serves their needs. The empty chair at Christmas wasn't mine after all. It belonged to the version of myself I'd lost somewhere along the way, the woman who had dreams and opinions and desires that had nothing to do with other people's needs. I'd spent so many years being indispensable that I'd forgotten how to be simply valuable. Now I know the difference. Indispensable is about what you do. Valuable is about who you are. I'm not indispensable anymore, and that's okay. But I am valuable. To Frank, who loves my laugh. To my book club, who values my insights. To my therapy group, who appreciates my honesty. To my children, who are finally learning to see me as Dorothy instead of just Mom. The empty chair taught me something crucial. You can't force people to want you, but you can stop needing them to. You can't make yourself indispensable to people who've outgrown needing you, but you can make yourself valuable to people who choose to see your worth. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the table where you're not wanted and set your own table where you are. My table seats 6 now. Frank, my neighbor Mrs. Patterson, 2 friends from book club, and me. Sometimes one of my children joins us, but only when they want to, not because they have to. It's a smaller table than the one I used to set for 18 people, but it's fuller in all the ways that matter. Because the most important seat, at any table, is the one you save for yourself. And for the first time in my life, that seat is never empty.